religion that strictly forbids alcohol also produces poets who sing endlessly of wine? How can the same religion that warns against intoxication also inspire verses dripping with drunken ecstasy? Islam condemns wine, yet Sufi poets, devout Muslims, have woven it into their most profound metaphors. Is this a contradiction, hypocrisy, or a deeper truth hidden within the folds of mysticism? What is this wine that flows through the verses of Rumi, Hafez, and many other poets? Mere rebellion, or the elixir of the divine intoxication? Imagine a wine so powerful that a single sip dissolves all worldly concerns, one that intoxicates the soul rather than the senses. This is the wine found in Sufi poetry, a symbol not of mere indulgence, but of deep spiritual ecstasy. While Islam forbids the consumption of alcohol, many Sufi poets such as Rumi and Hafez often wrote of wine, intoxication, and drunkenness. But their meaning was far removed from the physical world. Their poetry spoke in metaphors of divine love, mystical union, and transcendence. Sufism, the mystical branch of Islam, is centered on seeking closeness to God through love, devotion, and direct spiritual experience. Unlike traditional religious practices that emphasize external rituals, Sufism focuses on the internal journey, purifying the soul and reaching deeper states of awareness. Sufis believe in direct communion with the divine, often expressed through poetry, dance, and music. Their writings convey emotions of longing and ecstatic union, making use of symbolic language to describe the indescribable. Sufi poetry is rich with symbolism. Terms like wine, cupbearer, drunkenness, and tavern appear frequently but not in their literal sense. Instead, they convey another deeper meaning. In Sufi poetry, wine, known as may and sharab in Persian, is not about actual alcohol. It represents something much deeper, divine love. Imagine falling in love so intensely that you forget all your worries, lose track of time, and feel completely overwhelmed by joy. That's what wine symbolizes in Sufi poetry. Not a physical drink, but the intoxicating experience of feeling close to God. When a Sufi poet talks about drinking wine, he means absorbing divine love and wisdom until it fills their soul completely. Just as real wine makes people feel carefree, divine love makes a person forget their ego, selfish desires, and worldly concerns. It helps them enter a higher state of spiritual awareness where only love and unity with God matters. A cupbearer in Persian Sufi is someone who serves wine, but in Sufi poetry, this is a symbol for a spiritual guide, teacher, or even God himself. The cupbearer holds the key to divine love and offers it to those who seek truth. Sometimes the cupbearer is seen as the Prophet Muhammad, a wise mentor, or even a beloved friend who inspires spiritual awakening. Imagine being lost and thirsty in a vast desert, and suddenly someone hands you a cup of refreshing water. That person saves you from suffering and brings you relief. In the same way, the cupbearer in Sufi poetry guides seekers towards enlightenment, offering them the wine of divine love and wisdom. Normally, being drunk means losing control after drinking too much alcohol. But in Sufi poetry, drunkenness, masti in Persian, means forgetting yourself in the overwhelming experience of divine love. It is not about recklessness. It is about escaping the limits of the ego and becoming fully connected to God. When Sufi poets say, "I am drunk," they mean that they are so deeply in love with God that they no longer care about ordinary life. They are overwhelmed with joy, completely absorbed in their spiritual journey and free from distractions. Just as a person who is truly in love forgets everything except their beloved, a Sufi in a spiritual drunkenness forgets everything except God. A tavern, meykhane in Persian, is where people gather to drink. But in Sufi poetry, a tavern is a place where people surrender their ego and embrace spiritual truth. This doesn't mean an actual bar. It represents a state of mind where a person lets go of pride, selfishness, and worldly worries. When a poet speaks of entering the tavern, they mean letting go of their attachments to the material world and stepping into the realm of divine love. Just as travelers rest and share stories in a real tavern, spiritual seekers gather in the metaphorical tavern to connect with divine wisdom. The use of such imagery creates a poetic paradox. While Islam prohibits alcohol, the same concept is embraced as a metaphor for enlightenment. This allows poets to express deep emotions and ideas that transcend ordinary language. Among Sufi poets, Jalaluddin Rumi and Hafez of Shiraz are two of the most celebrated figures. Their poetry is filled with references to wine, yet always pointing to a deeper spiritual truth. Rumi's use of wine as a metaphor goes beyond mere intoxication. It represents a mystical transformation. In his poetry, wine is a symbol of divine love, ecstasy, and the dissolution of the self into something greater. To drink the wine of love is to abandon rational thought and surrender fully to the divine presence, losing oneself in an overwhelming spiritual connection. This theme appears frequently in his verses, where he speaks of taverns, intoxicated lovers, and the bliss of surrender. He writes, "Be drunk with love, for love is all that exists." Here, Rumi speaks of an intoxication that is not one of physical indulgence, but of spiritual immersion. The true lovers of God, in his view, don't rely on their own reason. They drink deeply from the cup of divine wisdom and experience an awakening beyond words and logic. He also says, "Either give me more wine or leave me alone." This line reflects the intensity of longing for divine intoxication, either to be completely immersed in love or to be left in solitude. It's a powerful expression of surrender to the overwhelming force of spiritual experience. Hafez, another great Persian poet, frequently used wine imagery to challenge religious hypocrisy. Hafez's use of wine imagery is layered with meaning, blending mysticism, rebellion, and spiritual awakening. In his poetry, wine is not merely a drink. It is a symbol of divine love, enlightenment, and the rejection of superficial piety. He often contrasts the tavern with the mosque, suggesting that true wisdom is found in surrender rather than rigid adherence to religious dogma. His verses celebrate divine intoxication while criticizing those who focus only on external piety. "I am the slave of the tavern's keeper, for wine teaches me 100 lessons." Hafez's poetry often suggests that divine wisdom is found not in rigid rules but in surrender, passion, and devotion, an idea that resonated deeply with many seekers of truth. One of his most famous verses on this theme is, "Come, O wine pourer, circulate a cup and pass it, since love seemed easy at first, but soon difficulties occurred." Here, Hafez calls for wine as a remedy for the hardships of love and life. The act of drinking symbolizes embracing the unknown, letting go of worldly concerns, and stepping into a deeper spiritual experience. The tavern in his poetry becomes a sanctuary for those seeking truth beyond conventional religious structures. Omar Khayyam, the Persian poet, mathematician, and philosopher, frequently used wine as a powerful symbol in his poetry. His famous collection, the Rubaiyat, is filled with verses that celebrate wine, not just as a physical indulgence, but as a metaphor for life's fleeting nature, spiritual awakening, and the rejection of rigid dogma. For Omar Khayyam, wine was more than a drink. It was a mystical elixir, a divine force that dissolved the illusions of the world and revealed deeper truths. In his Rubaiyat, wine takes on a sacred role, becoming the gateway to transcendence, a symbol of spiritual awakening, and an invitation to experience the divine in fleeting moments of earthly pleasure. Khayyam saw wine as a paradox. It intoxicated the body but liberated the soul. To drink was to surrender, to momentarily step outside of time and taste something infinite. Through this mystical intoxication, one could strip away the burdens of past and future, embracing the present as the only reality that truly mattered. His poetry reflects this vision. Drink wine and cast away the veil of reason, for in this sacred cup the divine breathes. What use is tomorrow, but faith in yesterday? The truth is in the moment where the goblet gleams. This verse conveys the essence of Khayyam's philosophy. He He urges the seeker to discard reason, to dissolve into the divine essence that wine unveils. The goblet becomes a chalice of revelation, its shimmering surface reflecting the mysteries of existence. Sufi poetry turns forbidden wine into a sacred metaphor for love, transformation, and unity with God. It is not about rebellion or indulgence, rather, it is about breaking free from the ego, embracing divine love, and experiencing the bliss of losing oneself in something greater. The wine of Sufi poetry is one that all can drink, a wine that nourishes the soul, not the body. What do you think about the concept of wine in Sufi poetry? Is it an unacceptable offense against the religion of Islam, or is it truly a profound concept that goes beyond ordinary understanding? Leave your opinions and ideas in the comments.